Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm pleased to present to you part 3 of the Neilly Mochan story. Back in 2015, I had the great honour of writing the biography of Neilly Mochan. This was adapted into a documentary, and that documentary during the lockdown is available free of charge on YouTube. It is normally on Amazon Prime, but you can watch it on YouTube, the full-length documentary. During the making of that film, I had the opportunity to interview a great many of Neilly's ex-colleagues, players who played alongside him, players who played for Celtic when he was a trainer, and also players who played when he was the kit man. And during that period of time when he was a kit man, he also looked after the ground staff boys. This continues our daily podcasts. A Celtic State of Mind are producing historical content as well as big interviews and also feature podcasts such as Kevin Graham's Scream of Celica, Colin Watt's Cult Celtic Heroes, and Paul Lamb's Match Worn Celtic podcast, which is a new addition to the AXOM schedule. As you may have guessed, Neilly Mochan has a special place in my own heart. I spent a lot of time with several members of his family. Young Neilly was a good friend also of Graeme Morrison. Graeme Morrison was a young player who went to Celtic way back in 1991 on a schoolboy forum, schoolboy signing. He had played previously with Gairdoch, and he was highly regarded as a Celtic youth player coming through the ranks to the reserve team, and he played alongside the likes of Mark Burchill, Stephen Craney and many others who were there or thereabouts in the first team picture. Graeme unfortunately did not progress to the first team, and he eventually left the club in 1999 after spending 8 years there. During his time at Celtic, he forged a real friendship with Neilly Mochan, who initially looked after him as a ground staff boy, and then throughout his time with Celtic, they shared a lift through from Falkirk. I met Graeme Morrison up at the hotel, which is owned by Davy Catanack, another ex-Celtic player from the Falkirk area, and we spoke about Graeme's memories of the great Neilly Mochan. Graeme, when you joined Celtic yourself as a young boy, what was Neilly Mochan's role and how were you able to get to know him?
Well, I left school when I was 15 and I went in part-time to Celtic, and at first I only went in 2 or 3 times a week because that's all you were allowed to go in, and then eventually I went in full-time. But when I got there, Neilly was a kit man, and it was Brian Scott, who was a physio at the time, said to me, "Where are you from?" "Falkirk." "Oh, Neilly's from Falkirk. You should get a lift home for Neilly." So I went and asked Neilly for a lift, and I just got met by a look. You know, he's a lift. "Who are you, son?" That sort of thing. But he gave me a lift, and then every day after that I started getting a lift off him. So that's how I got to know Neilly.
When you first arrived at Celtic Park, Graeme, you were part of the ground staff, which was a group of young guys who had various chores around about Celtic Park, chores that young players at top football clubs no longer have to endure. But the man that looked after the young ground staff boys was Neilly Mochan. Neilly had done that through the likes of John Gorman and George Conley, right through Brian McLaughlin, Paul McStay, Willie McStay, Charlie Nicholas, Peter Grant. And you came along later on in the early 90s and you got to know Neilly really well. How close were the young boys to Neilly Mochan?
Massively, because as you can imagine, going into Celtic Park, you know, and all the first team players, and there was only like a few reserve players when I was first in at Celtic Park. There was maybe like half a dozen reserve players, and then there was maybe like 3 or 4 ground staff. So it wasn't a massive amount of playing staff. And being one of the 3 or 4 ground staff, you know, the first team players and the reserve team players used to pile everything on you. But Neilly used to look after all the boys, so if you were one of his boys, then Neilly used to look after you, you know.
Neilly was famous for his antics, and you travelled through to Celtic Park with him on a daily basis from Falkirk. What are your memories of Neilly Mochan during these times, and what kind of antics do you recall about your car journeys with Neilly Mochan?
I travelled through with Neilly. To start with, Neilly used to give me a lift through, and then when I passed my test, I gave Neilly a lift through. But it used to work in your favour and it used to work against you as well. You know, because obviously to stop everybody thinking you were Neilly's favourite, it used to make sure that you got more than your fair share of tasks. You know, but he always used to look out for you as well. But I do remember, like when I first signed, I was part-time, and then I quickly got a pro. So I was only like on the ground staff for a short time. But even though I got my pro, I used to hang about and wait in Neilly and give him a hand and then go home with him, because you finished quite early anyway. But Neilly used to, like, what would I say, used to, like, for instance, one Christmas, well, the ground staff, I was a pro, so we were off on Christmas Day. It was just the first team that was in, and the ground staff had to be in because the first team were in. And but Neilly came in the changing room when I was getting changed with all the ground staff boys and said to all the ground staff boys, "Don't worry about tomorrow, lads, you're off for Christmas Day." And I was like, that's good. And he's like, "Graeme's coming in." And I was thinking, what? Graeme's coming in, me and Graeme will do the gear. And like, you had all your ground staff boys, and that's great. And I was thinking, really? But he would then put you in, and I would come in and help him. So you got things like that, where he would just, you know, he would make sure your feet are still on the ground and always pull you back in. But then you got good things. I remember I was going to leave Celtic, and like I said to Neilly said, "Where are you going?" And I think I was actually going to sign for Leeds or something, and I says to Neilly, "I'm going to get my boots." And Neilly says, "Right, okay." And then the time I had got there, Neilly had sorted it all out, and I had got a new contract, the contract I was looking for, and that was Neilly. You know, never ever said nothing, yeah, but and at the time you probably never knew, but looking back, that was Neilly. You know, that was the kind of influence he had on everybody. You know, he just resolved everything, no problem.
Neilly had a reputation for being a bit of a joker around Celtic Park, Graeme. Can you remember any pranks he pulled during your time there?
Neilly? Aye. You've probably heard the loads. And like we were talking off camera, we were talking about Andy Payton. I remember that one, I remember that crystal clear, because I was actually in the boot room. The argument that happened, it had been a build-up about Andy Payton saying he could outrun anybody, and then Neilly was obviously winding him up, saying, "Look, son," that was his favourite, "Look, son," you know, and Andy Payton took the bait, and Neilly says, "I could outrun you," right, and then it's just built up, and then it just got to a head in the boot room. I remember in the boot room Andy Payton saying, "I'll race you for any money you want," and Neilly says, "I tell you what," I think it was £100, I can't remember exactly. Neilly says, "You go that way round the pitch, and I'll go round that way round the pitch, and the first back to the line lifts the money." Andy Payton, no problem, Neilly. So I remember Andy Payton away to get his money, and I said to Neilly, I says, "You can't win." And he's like, just gives me his look. And then that's it, he's got the sandball and he's straight out, all dash pitch round the parkhead, Celtic Park, and then it was a really sunny day, and Andy Payton was going that way, and Neilly was going that way, and the two of them lined up, and Andy Payton was standing like that to go, and Neilly had his two fingers on the track, but like he was going to do a sprint, right, and all the players were there, Neilly, and Andy Payton, "On your marks, get set, go," and the two of them, so everybody was shouting, Andy. So Andy got right round the corner. He was going right round. He was still bombing it round the big arms, because he could run. He was right round. Neilly had got 40 yards. Stopped, turned back, came back to the line and left the money. It says, first back to the line, gets the money. He left the money straight up on the tunnel. So everybody's rolling about laughing. But Andy Payton's still coming down. He got to the halfway line, he still hadn't noticed. And got to the corner flag. And by that stage, everybody was like waving to him back up the tunnel where he came in raging. But it was gone, his money had gone. But that was the sort of thing that went on a daily basis, you know.
And on another memorable occasion, Neilly made you believe that you were in the first team squad. Can you tell us your memories of that incident?
I remember that well. Well, what happened is, like, when you were on the sort of ground staff, you just went in like the first team, you just went and kind of fetched the balls and did that. I had been called into the first team quite a lot, under Liam Brady, so I was playing and then he always was, you've got to get a chance and that sort of thing. So I had just turned as a pro, because Liam Brady, after 6 months, Liam Brady had gave me a pro. So I was just say, you're the favourite and all that sort of thing, so that was grand. And obviously I must have been a bit ball-headed or whatever, and I didn't have to do the kit and that. And then one Friday, I was waiting on Neilly called us in, gives a hand with the boots and we get away quicker, sort of thing. So I was like, right, okay. So he always had a wee chitty, and he was saying like, Nicholas, Walker, Morrison, and I was like, this is what right, Neil. He was like, deadpan, because he was always deadpan. He'd say, right, get your boots on, son. And I'd say, right, Neil. He'd say, look, get your boots on, but you know when to play. So it would put you in a predicament, so like, do you know, and everybody was serious, so I was like, put my boots in. Right, and I was like, okay. And then I got Chick Bates, who was assistant manager. This was under McCarry. He got Chick Bates, assistant manager, have a word with his eye. Tomorrow, wear this and wear that. So I obviously thought, I'm going to be in the first team. Wasn't it a big deal? Then just trying to play off from Neil, he says, you should phone your mum. So all the other ground staff boys were in it. So I says, yeah. So he gave me 10p and I went out and phoned my mum, who was in the pub. She runs a pub, so phoned the pub. Luckily it was engaged, do you know? So I was just in there and it was like beep, 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 beep. That's what I was doing. And it swallowed the 10p, so I didn't even get the 10p. So I turned round, I went back, and then they all burst out laughing. So that was fine. I just bided my time and gone back some other way.
On yet another occasion at Barrowfield, you inadvertently fell victim to Neilly Mochan during a particularly tough training session. What can you recall about that and how you came a cropper when you needed a drink?
Well, it wasn't at Barrowfield, it was Celtic Park, and that was under McCarry as well. I remember it was a scorching hot day and it was back at the pre-season. And if you remember, like Celtic Park is the old Celtic Park with the ash track, we used to do like what they call 400s. It was a lap of the park, but it wasn't really 400. It was more like 600 because the size of the track. But we were doing laps from there, and it was absolutely roasting. And it wasn't like nowadays where you see like your Lucozade and your isotonic drinks and that there. You had to go and get yourself a drink of water and that. I dived into the boot room, and as you go in the boot room, it was like a wee room to the right. Now, you were still doing laps, so it was between the laps. And I dived in, and then I was just looking for a drink, and it was these like green Gatorade water bottles. And I thought, wow, one's full, brilliant. And I just drunk about half it, and then my face started to I'm nearly came in. What are you doing? I was like, I couldn't breathe. It was brandy. It was brandy in a bottle. I just drunk half the bottle. And he's like, serves you right, get out there. And then I had to do the 400s, like try to breathe brandy. And up the top of the park being sick and that, you know, but I can remember that.
You were there for a long period of time, Graeme. How did Neilly's role change during your time at Celtic under several managers?
Neilly was... It's quite funny because like a lot of the fans would look at Neilly and see him as a kit man and things like that, but Neilly was well respected within the ground, and to be honest, it was probably like I remember different managers would ask him, you know, things, and he would give the final say sort of thing. And I'm not talking about teams or other managers pick their own teams, but they always like seek Neilly's guidance, so it was always like a massive influence, you know, behind the scenes.
And was Neilly able to keep players' feet on the ground by reminding them of some of the great sides that he had been part of previously?
Oh, massively, on a daily basis. I remember sitting outside the players' lounge at Celtic, and used to have the boot room, the physio room, the home dressing room, the wages dressing room. There was a wee door, and then there was a player lounge, and it was like comfy seats. And everybody just sit outside the players' lounge, and you could walk upstairs into the pitch. And I remember we were all sitting there, and this guy came out, and I think it was like I think it was off season, and there wasn't many players around. But there was this old guy who had come across from Canada, and he must have been in his 70s or whatever at the time, and he was asking us to sign like a ball for him. So we were all signing balls for him, and that we were reserve players or whatever. So, you know, lucky if you'd heard any of us. And then I remember Paul McStay walking him, and he was the club captain at the time. And Paul McStay, and he took the ball at Paul McStay. Do you know, and Paul McStay was just about to sign the ball, and Neilly walked through the door for the boot room, and the guy grabbed the ball off. He says, "Neilly, go and sign this." And Paul McStay hadn't even signed it. The guy was like, Neilly Mochan. And I then said to Neilly, I was there to get the game. We scored 4 goals. Raith Rovers. And Neilly's like, "No, I never scored 4 goals against Raith Rovers." And I went, you did. You scored 1 doing this and 1 doing that. And Neilly was like, "No, it wasn't me, son." He says, I was there. He says, "You're bound to mind the game." He says, "No, I can't mind that game. I can mind the game I scored 5. He said to him. And the boy was like, "That's what I meant." And Neilly, before the boy got a chance to answer, was off skate. And that's what Neilly was like.
When you consider the career that Neilly Mochan had, Graeme, in terms of all-time greats, where would you regard Neilly?
Wow. He's got to be up there for just this, not just the stuff he's done, but longevity too, you know. Like you said, I served under, was it 5 managers or whatever? Neilly's probably served under like the most of any guy at Celtic. So it probably speaks itself, you know.
And how important is it for a club like Celtic to have mainstays behind the scenes like Neilly Mochan?
I think any successful club has got to have their cornerstones, you know, because managers, let's be honest, more so today than ever, managers will come and go, you know, like players will outlast managers now, and having somebody in the background like Neilly is invaluable, you know.
Neilly was famously fond of a bet. He loved the horses and he loved the dogs. How did he manage to rope you into assisting him with his hobby during his working hours?
Well, Neilly used to get me to run down and put his bets on quite a few times for him, and he used to say, "Don't tell no one, get down and put that back on." So I used to run, and he would say, get some rules for the dairy for the boys. So that I was thinking, oh well, that was good, but looking back, that was probably his cover. You know, where have you been, Graeme? "Oh, we've been getting rules for the groundstaff." "Oh, that's nice." I was actually going down to the bookies for Neilly, so I put his bet on, go across to the dairy, get some ham rolls or corned beef rolls, and run back, slip him his line, and then feed the rest of the boys with their sandwiches. I remember one time, it must have been a game, and he set me out to put a bet on for him down at Willie Hills, and I came back up, so I come flying up, no stone to talk to him. I was just about to get in the green barriers at Celtic where you step up in the front door, and young Neilly said to us, "Where have you been?" I went, "Oh, the bookies." "For my dad?" "Aye." "What's the bet?" So, like being Neilly's son, I showed him, and Neilly was at the front door and I could see his look. So I went, "All right." And it was a football coupon, and I got up and he was like, "What do you think you're doing, son?" I says, "Well, Neilly asked me, but you had bets." So I showed him, "Don't you bother showing anybody my bets." And it was like, he crucified me for it, you know, but I used to go and put his bets on for him at times.
Now in 1994, Neilly sadly fell ill and you were drafted in to assist him with the kit whilst he was in hospital. What can you remember of the circumstances around Neilly's illness?
Well, I think I was reserve captain at the time, and like I'd got asked, I think it was for Frank Connor, "Look, Neilly's not well, could you give us a hand and do the kit at Brockville for Neilly?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." And what I'd done was I went in with Frank and we put the strips up and that, and then we went and played Falkirk. I stayed in Falkirk, so that was fine. And then once the game was over, I had to get in the bus and I'd take all the players to like Falkirk Royal. So we went into Falkirk Royal, and like I was kind of sitting outside the hospital because I'd been in it seen it was fine, and the players all went in. I was really close to Neilly, so it was grand, and he was shouting me back in, and like he was always winding me up, right? But he was shouting us back in, but I wouldn't go back in. I said, "Oh no, I'll see you tomorrow, whatever. And he kept saying, come back in. And I never went back in. And it was that night, like he had passed away. But I always thought, no, even though I knew he was ill, I always thought, it's Neilly, and he'll be alright. But he wasn't alright.
Now, during the writing of the Neilly Mochan book and the making of the film, I managed to get to know Graeme Morrison through various discussions that we had over the telephone. And on one memorable occasion, Graeme picked me up and took me through to speak to Frank Connor in Motherwell, and we went for some lunch that day. Sadly, Graeme was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and passed away in September of 2018 at the age of only 41. I didn't know Graeme as well as the likes of young Neilly Mochan or his ex-teammate John Potter, but in the short time that I got to know Graeme, I realised that he was a very special individual indeed, and he'll be sadly missed. Now, later on in his career, he joined up with Billy Stark, who at that time was managing Morton, and Billy Stark, of course, came in as part of Billy McNeill's revolution in 1987, just in time for the Celtic centenary season. He came in as a cultured midfield player from Aberdeen at a cut price and must have been the bargain of the season. Also, during the making of the Neilly Mochan documentary, I had an opportunity to meet Billy Stark up at Lesser Hampden on a beautiful sunny day, and we managed to have a chat outside on one of the balconies. You might hear some seagulls in the background and overhead aeroplanes, but hopefully that won't take away your enjoyment from this interview I did with Billy Stark, who remains a real gentleman. Billy, let's go back to 1987. Can you talk me through your arrival at Celtic Park and your introduction to Neilly Mochan?
Well, I wasn't inexperienced. I was, I think, 30 years old when I joined Celtic, and I was very fortunate that circumstances worked for me with Alan McInally, Mo Johnston, Brian McClare and Murdo MacLeod all leaving that summer. And of course, Big Billy was installed as manager and needed to bring in some players. So obviously, having been a competitor against Celtic with St Mirren and Aberdeen, Big Billy knew of me, and luckily for me, felt that I could come in and do a job. So I was coming from a team that had success, so that was a good position to be in, coming to a club like Celtic where you're expected to win every game and to have trophies in the cabinet at the end of the season. So I was very fortunate, as I say. And when I came to the club, Billy McNeill, Tommy Craig was the assistant, and of course Neilly was the kit man. And being a reasonable student of Scottish football, I knew all about Neilly. And of course, having played against him, you always bumped into him because he was always busy doing his work round about the dressing rooms. So I knew of him, but didn't know him personally, obviously. And it was, I can't say, and it's probably indicative of Neilly that there was one particular moment that I remember meeting him, because he was very unassuming. He just went about his work, but he was a real character, and I think played a huge part in Celtic's history, obviously, and people know that because of what he did as a player particularly, but as part of the backroom staff during the Jockstein years, and certainly when we were there and the manager in between, he was to sort of try to sum him up. I would say that the words that come to mind are wise, knowledgeable, and as I say, unassuming. I mean, for me, very, very, very underestimated in terms of what Celtic have achieved over the years after his playing career and the part that he played. How
important was Neilly in the lead up to the big encounters during that centenary season? Obviously we had big games against Rangers and also the big cup games.
Well, he was a calming influence. I mean, I think that's the point I'm trying to make about the type of character that he was. Huge experience, huge success as a player, playing for Scotland, World Cup finals, through the sort of some lean years, but certainly a big factor in the League Cup success, the 7-1 game and the Coronation Cup, and then obviously becoming part of the backroom staff. And I think that's the thing when I think back, that what a job Billy McNeill had in front of him, where Graeme Souness had come in and revolutionised Scottish football, really, in terms of the money that he was able to spend. And, Celtic, of course, were expected to live with that and to at least match it. But we didn't have the funds that they had, and obviously that's all been part of recent history about Celtic, maybe the biscuit tin philosophy and all the rest of it, which became a standing joke. But I think Billy kept Tommy Craig, and obviously he had Neilly Mochan, and I'm sure Billy would tell you that was a huge, big bonus for him to have nearly that consistency that was always there, that had been there and done it all. So as I say, he was a quiet, unassuming guy, but nobody stepped over the line with him, because he could cut you down with a one-liner. And I think that's the other thing that I remember about him, because in the years that I was there, when new players came, and everybody's sort of different types of characters, and you would get quieter ones, which I would probably put myself in that category. But there was the ebullient ones and the ones full of personality, like the Machiavellis and all the rest of it, that you absolutely need. And if they were getting a wee bit above themselves, then Neilly took it upon himself to bring them down to earth a wee bit. And sometimes it only took one line. It was never. I can't recall Neilly raising his voice. I really don't. But I think that's the measure of him, that the authority that he had without having to do that was absolutely there, and everybody recognised it and respected it. And was
Neilly able to enjoy the successes with the team as you went on to win the double that year?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that season, if you were to look back over a career, that season for me was personally the highlight, because it was I was going to say a roller coaster. It wasn't quite a roller coaster, because we knew what was in front of us in terms of what we were expected to achieve. And I don't think anybody had us as favourites, because, as I say, Graeme Souness was bringing English international players to fill the squad at Ibrox. So we knew it was going to be tough. And I think the things that were very, very important to us that season were what Big Billy installed. And that was a spirit for the ones that had came up from England, very quickly learning what Celtic was all about. I mean, we in that season we were. I think my wife says it even now, that socially there was not a weekend that you weren't out. You were at Celtic supporters' dues, and Billy McNeil insisted on that they were the most important people, and the players were expected to go and show them that they were part of that. So Neilly, as I say, was part of that backroom staff that was able to gel everybody very quickly in his own quiet way. And I think the important thing to point out was, because he wasn't loud and all the rest of it, he had a terrific sense of humour and loved a laugh. And as you say, with the celebrations, he loved Celtic, and he loved Celtic being successful. But I never saw that shown in a way that was over the top. And I think that's something that adds to that authority. When you see somebody like that, and you're maybe getting carried away a wee bit in the moment, and you think, well, he's been there and seen and done it all, it's not that big a deal to him. So and I think he quite liked putting that across, because he never spoke about his career, but you knew that he had that up his sleeve if he needed it, but he was never forced to use it, I don't think.
When you returned with Tommy Burns in 1994 as part of the management team, Billy, can you tell me how the club had changed since your playing days, and how Neilly Mochan's role had changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously everybody knows the circumstances that around that time, and with Fergus McCann coming in and taking over the club and basically saving the club. If that's not too dramatic, I mean, we all tend to think that would have been impossible for Celtic to be anything other than the club it is now. But it was desperate times. There's no doubt about that. And I think just as I said about Big Billy coming in at a difficult time, maybe that's the nature of getting a manager's job. Tommy came in at a time when a new stadium needed to be built. There had been demonstrations and all the rest of it, and again it was I think something that Tommy had in common with Big Billy, that they were Celtic legends and they knew exactly what was required in terms of bringing everybody together, and that's what he did. Unfortunately, we weren't able quite to get the silverware that we maybe felt we deserved for the brand of football that was being played, and the talent of the players that came in. So, that was disappointing. But I think, part of that coming back for me was a big thing, because you come as a player, and as I say, when I came, I had some medals and I had played in cup finals. So, whilst it was still a big jump to come to a club like Celtic, there was a confidence within yourself. Then after you stop playing, you go into management and you have to find your feet a wee bit there. And Tommy and I were only in the job a couple of years at Kilmarnock, so you were coming back to a massive club at a fairly young age. I mean, I think we were both about 37 at the time, and you see that huge job in front of you, and you're always looking for wee things to reassure you, and Neilly Mochan was very much one of them that you came back in. There was a lot of changes, obviously, that take place over, I think it was 4 years, and as I say, you find your feet. You've got a new squad of players. There was some players that were still there that we had played with, but Neilly was his usual, confident, unassuming, and you just looked at him for some reassurance. And if we came back to a club that was maybe changed a wee bit and in turmoil, then there was that aura that Neilly had that just sort of settled you down a wee bit. But as I say, a fantastic sense of humour, and I used to travel through from Falkirk and that area with some of the young boys, and he would, as I say, they were in awe of him because he was a local hero as well. And I can remember those times in the middle of winter, he would roll down the back window where they were sitting, and he would force them to sit there freezing all the way through to Celtic Park, and they never said a word, just put up with it. So of course Neilly would be trolling away himself in the front seat. And the other story that I remember, to add a bit of humour, was you mentioned Jimmy Steele, who was another fantastic Celtic man and a Celtic character, and in a pre-season trip, I think it was Germany or something like that, and we came in for something to eat for dinner, and it's sort of different ways, of course, different cultures and ways of eating, and they brought in a couple of bowls of pepper sauce, because we were obviously getting steaks, and of course Neilly and Steely thought it was soup. So the two of them started, and you could see it was almost like a cartoon. They were just going red all the way up. So that was one of the few, maybe the only occasion I remember Neilly being wrong-footed a wee bit. So he took a bit of stick for that. But of course, he would always come back and have the last word.
When you consider some of the people that Neilly had worked really closely with over the period of 10, 15 years, the likes of Peter Grant, Paul McStay, Tommy Burns, of course, and Pat Bonner, how tough was Neilly's passing to the senior pros who had known him all this time and who had been an influence too?
Yeah, as I say, I was unfortunate in that I only came to know Neilly from going as a player at an older age. But as I've been saying, everybody had total respect for the man, and the young ones that came through the ground staff and obviously had a closer link with them, not just in terms of time, but in terms of working round about the park after the players had gone, and Neilly still there with his kit, and it was. I mean, there's been, when you're involved with a club like Celtic and become part of it, then they talk about being a family, and there's been many people have passed on that bring a lot of grief and heartbreak for people, and they're always difficult. And in terms of Neilly, I could see that. Everybody could see it with the likes of Tommy and and Peter and Paul that had came through as young lads with him and they'd known him all those years. It's always harder. But as I say, it was really sad.
How important do you think it is in the modern game to have people like Neilly Mochan around about the big clubs who know the traditions and the history of a club like Celtic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's vital. I mean, some people might have different views on that, but to me, it's a given. It's absolutely essential that you have somebody that, you know, everybody comes and goes. That's the thing. The club will always be there, and the supporters will always be there in different forms, of course. But you know, you come, you feel fortunate to have had your time there, and you know, you try to, I think, put it in perspective. But I think the one thing that you recognise is that when you have a Neilly Mochan at a club like Celtic, a huge club, that you know, the staff from when I was a player to coming back in the management side, I think was increased. I'm talking about the staff working in the building was increased. I don't know. I think I remember Jim Kennedy and Irene were the two workers that basically handled everything at Celtic Park. And then when you come back, there's so much staff. I mean, 10 times at least, and all new faces that you don't know. But obviously you recognise that the football's moving on and it's more of a business. And I think that crystallises that point that you make there, that as that happens, if you have somebody that was there right throughout and has adapted and still been the influence that Neilly was, then you can't buy that.
There were two interviews that I was lucky enough to do back in 2015 with Graeme Morrison and Billy Stark. That takes us up to part 3 of the Neilly Mochan story, of which there will be another couple of parts. And this is one of our historical podcasts. There will be various others coming up around about the Fergus McCann takeover, so you can look forward to them. In the meantime, if you liked what you heard from Billy and Graeme, or some of the previous interviews that we have had on the Neilly Mochan podcast with the likes of Bobby Lennox, Evan Williams and Andy Walker, then you can watch the full documentary on YouTube. Just type in Celtic Smiler. It will be up there for a limited period while everybody is in lockdown. Subscribe to A Celtic State of Mind on YouTube, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, visit our website at axom.net where we have well over 400 articles, and subscribe to us on your podcast app where you will get daily podcasts from A Celtic State of Mind.